All right, so in this next part of our comparison between Rogue, Rep, and Titan Fitness and a $1,500 budget, we'll be looking at Rep Fitness, who has been doing some fantastic things the last couple of years. So let's dive in and see what we can get for $1,500. All right, so when it gets to Rep, there's a lot to like. Like I mentioned, they've really been coming out with a lot of great stuff and innovation over the last couple of years. Because they are generally an import type company, prices are lower comparatively speaking, especially when it comes to budget friendly options. So let's start where we started before, and let's go in and start looking at some of the rack stuff. So I'm going to go into rigs and racks and not the rack builder, because just like we looked at before, you're probably not going to get a nice 6-post rack with all the bells and whistles on here, right? It's just going to be way out of our budget. So we're going to limit our budget to around $1,000 for the rack. I think that's fair. We won't go full 1,000 on this, obviously, but it just is going to eliminate a lot of the stuff that we would probably have looked at before. So let's go ahead and just take a look and see what we got. Lots of options. We have squat rack builders, the SR4000, which would be similar to what we picked at from Rogue for $749. But what I think we're really going to go with here is we can actually get like a 4-post type rack, which is going to add in some extra benefits and actually be cheaper than what we've spent previously. So in this case, I'm going to be taking a look at the PR1000 and the PR1100 power rack, which retail anywhere between $380 and $400. Now there is a 1050 short power rack. However, given that the price difference isn't that much, and in the Rogue example, we actually went a little bit higher, that's what I'm going to go with in this option as well. Now for this, I will be taking a look actually at the PR1000. It's a little bit more expensive, but there's built-in plate storage, which I like. But if you'd prefer the 1100, you could as well, because that's going to give you some color options along the way. Now, a big thing to notice about this, which is different, is we're not dealing with true 3x3 hardware. In fact, we're dealing with something much less than that. It might be hard to see on here, but from the hole size, you can tell that it's not the normal 5/8 inch. So one of the downsides of going with a build like this, where we're actually saving money, as you can see, is the fact that you're not going to have the ability to add a lot of accessories on later. Now, obviously for this particular build, we're sticking at $1,500, so we're not going to be adding accessories as is. But with this rack, what you get is something that's completely still adjustable in terms of your safeties, which this one includes, where the Rogue version did not. You're also in an enclosed cage, which I think is safer for most people. You get the pull-up bar integration, which we liked on the squat rack previously, but in this case, towards the rear, you can actually see you do have some integrated plate storage, which the other option, again, did not. So we're paying less and getting a little bit more, but the trade-offs are that we're going out of what most would consider a standardized system. So next, let's take a look at benches. And I got to say, out of all these providers, I think Rep offers the most variety and maybe some of the best benches out there. There's a lot of different price ranging here. And in the Rogue example, where we didn't look at adjustable benches because it would have broken our budget, Rep actually has some budget-friendly adjustable benches, most notably here the AB3100, which you also get your choice of color in, which again is really nice and typically not seen at this price point. Now, I've done actual reviews of the FB5000, as I think it's one of the best flat benches you can buy, and normally I would say go this route, but to keep all things similar in the sense of we want the best bang for our buck and economical, it's only around $20 more to get the adjustable weight bench, and I think a lot of people will find, even though it's not as good of a flat bench as the FB5000, the fact that you can now do incline work on here and get some adjustability, as well as maybe add a pop of color in, is going to be appealing to more of the masses. So we're going to go with the adjustable weight bench here. And in this case, we're just going to stick with the metallic black color because that's just fairly standard. We're going to go ahead and add that to the cart. Rep has a lot of options when it comes to barbells, but for our purpose, we're going to want to look at powerlifting bars because I think, again, for most people who are benching, squatting, and deadlifting, that makes the most sense. So let's filter this by powerlifting. We're going to get a couple of examples here, including a squat, a deadlift bar. We're not going to be looking at that because we're looking primarily for something to bench, squat, and deadlift with. And it's my opinion that you should spend a good amount of money on the barbell. This is not something we want to cheap out on. So we're not going to be looking at the Badlands bar. We're not going to be looking at the Delta Basic bar. We're going to be looking at the Black Diamond Power Bar and the Double Black Diamond Power Bar, which in my opinion is the most similar to what you'd get from an Ohio Power Bar, meaning that it's the crown jewel of their powerlifting barbell series. Now, the main difference between these are just the knurling on it. A black diamond power bar is going to have more of a medium knurl. The double black diamond is going to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more grippy. The price difference between these two is only $10. And although we are keeping budget in mind, a $10 difference for a better grip is something that is well worth it, in my opinion. So a double black diamond power bar. Now, an interesting thing here is this only really comes in Cerakote or in stainless steel. Obviously, we're not going to go to the stainless route because when we start taking a look at stainless, that's going to add $50 to, in some cases, $100 more. But again, you can get a Cerakote bar here in a couple of different colors. I'm going to keep it black just to keep it consistent with what else that we've been looking at. But we're going to go ahead and add this to the cart for $299. All right, so let's take a look at plates next. A lot of great options here, including these nice new calibrated steel plates with a nickel finish, which unfortunately are nowhere near our budget. So let's go ahead and sort these from pricing. We'll go low to high, and chances are we're going to be looking at a similar plate to like we had from Rogue. In fact, they might even come from the same factory because visually they look almost identical. So we're going to shop now for those in particular. And just like before, we're looking for pairs of everything. In this case, unlike Rogue, Rep actually includes some sets here. So let's go ahead and do the 245-pound set, which I think includes everything that we had in the Rogue, except in this case, it actually throws in a 2.5-pound pair, which we did not do on the Rogue end. But pricing wise, we're around the same price what we did with Rogue. So let's go ahead and add these to the cart. For plates, a bar, a bench, and a rack, the same stuff that we got from Rogue, but in this case, some slightly different things with an adjustable bench and actually a 4-post rack. We're at a total of $1,471.96. Let's just round up, $1,472 if you will, roughly about $50 more expensive than Rogue. But again, to be noted, some different levels of product here and not made in the USA. There's our build out with Rep, $1,472, a little bit more expensive than Rogue, but again, some key differences there that we'll compare at the end after we talk about Titan. How do you think we did with this build? What would you have done differently with some of the pieces? And or what feedback do you have in this video series so far? Tune in next time while we dive into Titan Fitness, and then finally we'll compare all three and decide which one offers the best for your $1,500.